On January 31st, 2012, justice was obstructed, but not by Carlos Miller. The only justice that was obstructed was by the government and by Nancy Perez, a police officer. She not only obstructed justice, she violated Mr. Miller's First Amendment constitutional rights. Freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Carlos Miller is a photojournalist. He's a freelancer. He's worked for Time Magazine. His blog has been owned by Barnes & Noble. He worked for Miami Beach 411. He takes different jobs. And he had been working for Miami Beach 411 documenting the protests on January 31st, 2012. And on January 31st, 2012, they were evicting the protesters. The Miami Beach Police Department, the Miami-Dade Police Department, together with some other agencies, were evicting everybody from the government center. Everybody was camped out, protesting. There will not be one piece of evidence to show that Mr. Miller was in a tent, protesting, in any way affiliated with the protesters that night. He was there as a journalist, filming and documenting the events. Now, what happened that night? You're going to hear that on January 31st, the police over the bullhorn told everybody to get out of the government center. And slowly people started leaving the government center and down the street. And the police, and they're right here, were kind of following everybody and marching behind them, making sure that everybody cleared. 3 blocks down the road, somewhere down on the other part of this area, Mr. Miller was arrested, not at the government center. No one told Mr. Miller directly, you have to leave. You see, because he was there as a journalist. And there's no question that he was a journalist and that he was there as a part of the media. In fact, a member from the Miami Herald who was there documenting the arrests and the protests, just like Mr. Miller was, will testify. There's no question in my mind. He was a journalist. In fact, he'll tell you, he even had to ask the police, am I doing something wrong? Because he was just feet away from Mr. Miller. But you know what? They arrested Mr. Miller, and not Glenn Garvin from the Miami Herald, or anybody else who was on the sidewalk documenting this incident, because he got personal. The state may not want to talk about this during the course of their trial, but you're going to hear about it through cross-examination and other witnesses. You're going to hear that Mr. Miller at one point was documenting an arrest, and he was filming it, and there was a police officer blocking his shot. You'll conclude at the end of this case that police officers aren't crazy about being filmed, especially when they're effectuating an arrest for civil liability and other reasons. And yes, he may have used some foul language, like, I think he said, get the F out of the way, please, so you're blocking my shot. You'll see at one point that that's pretty much the context of what Mr. Miller did. But see, Nancy Perez, the public information officer, she saw that, and she registered it. She didn't act on it right away. See, she's been doing this for 26 years, way too long. She knows better than that, especially when there's cameras everywhere. So she waited, and she waited to the right time, 3 blocks down the road, when she saw him, and she said, aha, we told you before, you're not supposed to be here. 39 this guy. And they arrested him for nothing. For exercising his First Amendment rights, for being an American, just because she didn't like him. That, members of the jury, is un-American. And I believe that's what you'll conclude at the end of this case happened. You'll hear, another way we're going to show that is that there was an email sent to Nancy Perez that morning about Carlos Miller. Sent to Nancy Perez.
Objection, counsel is testifying.
Part of the evidence we're going to hear.
The evidence that you will hear, so let's just set that the evidence you will hear. Go ahead.
And she was aware who Carlos Miller was because they were told. Carlos Miller, photojournalist, watch out for him. is going to be at the event. So she knew who he was. She kept an eye on him. She didn't do anything at first. The moment that he did something she didn't like, she arrested him. Because she didn't like what he had to say or do. And members of the jury, that's what you're going to conclude happened at the end of this case. And when you put the facts together with the law, you come to the only conclusion that is consistent with the law, the facts, what is right, and what is fair and just under the Constitution of the United States, and that is the verdict that Mr. Miller is not guilty.